All right, this is class number 11, and we're moving on to the next slides, and we're carrying on. Intervening in a crisis. Gather as much information on the issue as possible. I told you the story last week about getting all caught up in a mess. Crises are crises for a reason. It's chaos, right? If it literally says crisis, it's not like, hey, this is going to be something simple. Like a crisis is a crisis. The problem with some crises, you can't get all the information right away. Like it is a crisis because you don't know what's going on, right? Global pandemic. We didn't know what in the world we were facing. Like I was actually on vacation. It was spring break in March of last year. I was on vacation. We were supposed to be flying. My wife and I and the kids were supposed to be flying. We were going to go skiing in like northern Massachusetts or Vermont or something. We were going somewhere. We're going to fly. We'd never been skiing as a family. Never been. We were like, dude, there's this cool place. It's cheap. We can get there. We got like flight points or whatever, like Southwest travel. We're going. Like, and then it was like, no, we're not going because like flights aren't really flying. Fine. We'll go to like Hilton Head, like 5 hours from here. Just drive. We'll go to Savannah for a night. And we'll go out to Hilton Head because it's quiet. There's old people. We like quiet old people. We're good. So we'll do that. We're in Savannah or we're in Hilton Head, and I get a call from Pastor Matt, and he's like, dude, it's crazy. We're gonna have to go online this weekend. We're not gonna do charters. Like, we gotta kind of shift it all around. And I'm on vacation for spring break with my family, you know. I'm like, okay, tell me, how can I help? And I'm like sitting on the sidelines on vacation, and everything here is just spinning, like crisis. Things are shutting down, schools are closed, like they're not going back. We're 2 weeks to bend the curve or whatever that was to start, you know, like y'all remember this stuff. We didn't know we're gonna be here 2 years later almost, and still like kind of going, what are we doing? Like, are we good now? Like, mask, no mask. Oh wait, we're getting shots. We getting shots? No, we're not getting shots. Are you gonna lose my job if I don't get a shot? You know, all the chaos, crazy. How did we get here, right? Well, let's try to get as much, even that just get what you can get so you can make a good decision in the middle of it, right? So we got to gather information. Try to get an understanding of what the people, about the people involved. So let's call this a family dynamic. There was one time, I came back from youth camp. I was a youth pastor at the time. Came back from youth camp, and like the last night of camp, we often would have people kind of share their story, share a little testimony of what God did. One of the girls expressed to a leader that some inappropriate things had happened. Her dad had done some things to her inappropriately, you know, it wasn't like within days ago, so it was like, you know, it's months ago or even maybe a year before. But when that sort of thing is disclosed to somebody who has a spiritual, you know, leadership capacity in their lives, and like we're a mandated reporter as a pastor, if you get that disclosed to you, you got to go report that. So if you're, same as if you're a teacher or you're a doctor or you're a caretaker and that gets disclosed to you in a professional setting, you got to disclose that to DCF. So I remember calling DCF and I thought these parents are going to hate me because this girl told us a story, but we have to, it's not my job to figure out what's going on. But I do have to know who's involved. Like I got to know who's dad. Like give me dad's name, give me mom's name. What's your address? Where do you go to school? Like there's some details you need to have to be able to make that call to the abuse hotline. Or you're just gonna get, it's all gonna get thrown out and you're not gonna have the right information, you have to do it again. So you wanna gather information about who's involved in the situation. In that situation, the family actually grew closer because they've been trying to figure out what's going on with their young daughter who'd have all these behavioral issues. Well, dad was not in the picture. Dad's, you know, his mom and dad were already separated. It was like a, you know, dynamic of they knew something was wrong. But we actually got to help a family navigate the process. Wasn't pretty, wasn't best, you know, in the natural seemingly. But in the end, we look back and we go, that was pretty good. Like what happened there actually worked out pretty good. And we were able to help a family. But you got to have information. Keep focused on the primary issue at hand. You know what can happen? You get in some rabbit trails real fast, and you can go off on this tangent. And if we're not careful, those tangents are going to lead to places that you try to open up another can of worms and another can of worms, and you're not actually going to get to the bottom of the real crisis. Like you might need to ask sometimes, how does this relate to what we're trying to solve, or how does this relate to that crisis? Right? Talking about a marriage situation. Husband starts going down a rabbit trail. Yeah, but she always does this, and every day does this, and before you know it, it becomes like gross exaggerations all the time. And you're like, so how does that relate to this issue over here? Like, there's a couple that my wife and I have been mentoring that have plenty of financial resources. Finance are not a problem, right? And this couple was in our office because it had a huge blowout about the husband buying a $40 like fishing reel off of Amazon. The woman freaked out when she came home and saw a package from Amazon on the doorsteps, and it was a fishing reel, and it was a $40 fishing reel. She didn't care about the $40 per se, but it was, why are you spending money on those things? Because she was working night shift. Did I ever tell you this story? She was working night shift all the time to provide for their family because she was a physician, like she's a local doctor who was working night shift in the emergency room to provide for the family. Well, the dude was working too. They were both making adequate income, but because she felt like she was missing out on the parenting side of the parent her kids because she's gone at night, couldn't put her kids down to bed at night, couldn't read stories to them at night, couldn't feed them at night. She's carrying the burden of, I'm working hard to take care of our family, and you're wasting our money on fishing reels. And a huge blow up. And the huge blow up was, I can't do this anymore. We're not going to, it just went on this whole thing, right? Well, what in the world did the fishing reel have to do with the real crisis? The real crisis was not the fishing reel. The real crisis was that her value was undermined by having to work nights. Well, we start talking about, can you shift change? Like, do you have to work night shift? Like, can you get a different role? Like, you're a nurse practitioner. I'm sure as a emergency room nurse practitioner, I'm sure there is need all across the county or other areas of our community if need be. Like, you could work in a urgent care setting, or there's other settings you can work in that are not night shift all the time, if that's the real thing. And are you getting paid extra money because you're working nights and that's the issue you're trying to make one? Because what is the issue? Why are you doing that? Well, what it got down to was that she actually found her worth and value in the crisis and in the chaos in the emergency room late at night. Like, there's always an auto accident, there's always a DUI, there's always a very intense situation. She lived for that adrenaline, of I'm going to be the hero at 2 a.m. on my night shift that I'm working, right? I'm going to rescue this, I'm going to carry it when no one else can, and I'm tough and I can do this, right? But what it was touching was it's blowing up your marriage because now you're freaking out over $40 things. When you make $200,000 a year, you should not worry about the $40 rate. You got plenty. We sat down with them, we built a budget, we did all the things, and there was plenty in the budget to buy a $40 item here and there. But that was the trigger, right? So sometimes you just have to get past the, hey, what's the real issue? What's the primary issue? It's not about money. It's not about dollars. There's a bigger issue here. You might have to sift through it again. You got to listen. You got to hear some of the cues along the way to go, that is not it. That is not it. That's not it. What's the real thing? And let's keep focused on what the real thing is. Work a good communication between the parties involved. Sometimes in a marriage environment, are y'all cold? Because it's like, it started blowing. Like, let me, time out. We gonna fix this. I'm like, I don't know, when it kicks on, it is like.
Yeah, and I think it might be just right above.
Yeah, probably just right above me.
Maybe right there or something.
Yeah. Turn that thing down. So, work a good communication between the parties involved. In a marriage situation, again, let's not talk marriage, let's talk about, last week I think I was talking about the dude who didn't mow his grass, and the neighbor comes over, freaks out, they start gossiping about one another, and it just turns into something else, right? Well, we gotta hear everybody. Like, you can't, like, I'm a dude, I could certainly side with a dude in a marriage situation. Like, I can empathize with a dude, like, providing for your family or something, or working hard, and like, I could get on board with like a dude sometimes just because he's a dude. And because we hang, because maybe we talk like, or he was an athlete, maybe I'm athletic or something. I actually have to stop and go, so what do you think? Like, and not like, so what, like actually value what the other person's saying, value both sides of a story. If there's conflict and there's crisis, let's hear all the parties involved. Let's not just take a side from the get-go because it's easy and because I can connect with that person or my personality is like that. That doesn't work. We got to stay neutral and stay in the middle. And help people to treat each other fairly in the conflict. I mean, sometimes you just got to go, whoa, hold on. Let's fight fair. If we're going to fight fair, if we're going to fight, let's like at least use the right, like you can't bring up World War like 17 over here, or go back to the Korean War either. You can't go back 30 years ago and start pulling that out on them. That's not fair. Like, slow down a second. Like, it happens all the time in marriage. In marriage counseling, marriage care, you're going to hear, oh, but remember 2 years ago when what? Hold up. Like, it's not fair. It's not fair. Or you get loud and that shuts your partner down, right? Not fair. Like, calm down a second, dude. Or maybe you gotta go out of the room for a minute so we can hear this, because we have, or it's not fair if he or she's over there rolling their eyes every time and dishonoring and disrespecting. Like, sometimes you just gotta stop and go, hold up. Let's treat each other like we actually like each other, right? Like, could happen on our staff here. I could sit with two of our staff members that are like, seemingly a month ago, we're doing great and we're great friends, and suddenly now something happens because you said this about so-and-so and that, and like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Remember we actually like each other? Like, we're on the same team, remember? Like, hold up, slow down a second. Or, it just can happen so fast that people can turn on each other so quickly and just begin to just not even treat each other fairly in conflict. And so we get to help people with that. That means you gotta be a good referee. Like, somebody gotta blow the whistle and be like, hold up, that's not right, stop. That's hard to do if you get sucked into the story. You get sucked in fast and might be taken aside. Work to heal and strengthen relationships. Of course, that's our job, is to actually try to heal and strengthen something. We're not trying to cause more problems. Like, sometimes you can walk into a problem without actually seeing it. You could open a can of worms that you didn't know was there. Again, in like marriage or family, care, counseling kinds of things, like, you just have to be careful. Like, you don't need to rehash some dude's past of, they have previous marriages, or, there's previous relationships outside. Like, when in the marriage assessment or the marriage mentoring thing that we do, they take a long assessment. They answer like 160 questions, like from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So agree, well, let me see. So neutral, and it'd be like agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And it'll spit out the 160 answers to the mentor, right? So as a facilitator of this mentorship relationship, I get to see all the answers of their thing. Well, it's not my job to disclose every one of the answers of the husband and wife when it's supposed to be confidential. Oh, so I noticed here that you strongly agree that that she has no spiritual beliefs, when you're supposed to be talking about like their communication style. Like, you just take it over this thing and you're like, oh, wham. Like, you could just suddenly, really just kind of open up a can of worms you don't need to open up. So remember, you're trying to heal and strengthen. I don't think anyone would ever go, hey, I'm trying to tear something down. Like, you don't go into stuff normally like trying to do that, but you have to constantly, stay on top of, hey, we're here to build something. Find points of common concern and mutual agreement. Again, in marriage mentorship, this assessment that we do is called Prepare and Enrich. It'll spit out like a graph of like bar graph of like 0 to 100% agreement, like how a couple is doing in 9 different areas, right? And there are some devitalized. There's like 5 categories that it spits out. And the worst is a devitalized couple. When a devitalized couple, you're gonna have a lot of really low scores, like 0s and 10% and 20% agreement. It just means they're really kind of at odds in a lot of different areas, with 9 different areas. So it's possible you could be devitalized and have like one area that might be like 40% and everything else is less than that. If that be the case, we're gonna celebrate the 40%. Or we're gonna celebrate, hey, you guys came to get help. We are so excited you're here. Literally the Prepare and Enrich statistics say that if you just show up one time into a marriage mentorship, that the chances of surviving that relationship go way up. Like, I don't know the percentage, but it goes significantly up by just showing up. Because you showed up today, the chances of your marriage surviving and even thriving goes up by X number of percentage. Hey, because you're willing to take the assessment. If you would have never met with us, you just took that assessment, it's going to help your marriage get better. You know what? It's possible, because we find common ground. That, hey, you can do this. Come on, you can do this, right? Hey, I noticed that you guys, they only have one strength area. Man, we're going to champion the strength area because there's common ground there. And now, once we have common ground, now we can win. In marriage, again, you at least liked each other at some point back there, right? Hey, tell me how you all met. Usually, people get kind of excited about telling their story of how they met. We got common ground again, right? Like, we need to actually find the common ground before we can get them to agree that it is common ground, right? So it's good for us, first of all, to know the situation, again, the crisis. That's why you want to get as much information as you can. Understand somebody's story before you kind of get into the weeds of it, right? If we can find common ground, mutual agreement, we can actually keep people moving forward. There's a few more. Don't be too quick to get an agreement on an issue if it is not resolved. What that means is that you could get somewhere faster than you need to get to, like, because sometimes somebody's gonna go, oh yeah, it's fine.
Yep.
No, it's not fine. Like, you're just stopping the fight because it's just easier, you think, and you're just sweeping it under the carpet, and it's just a matter of time before it comes back out and explodes, right?
Yeah.
Don't be in such a hurry, like, and I know that can get messier sometimes. You're like, man, we just be done finally. Like, let's just be done with this. Well, let's actually build something, heal something, and not just sweep something, because sweeping something just kicks it down the road, and you're not going to win there. Work towards a win-win solution if possible. Ideally, everyone wins. We all win, right? If one side of the battle or one side of the crisis wins, somebody loses it. And Pastor Dan was sharing this past weekend that, you know, in family, you know, you can't just go in there and be like, yes, I won that battle, right? Because you got to live together for the rest of your life, right? Like, you can do that at work, you can do that in negotiating a car deal or negotiating some sort of deal, you can do that, right? We've been in the middle of this, we've been trying to lease a piece of property, not my wife and I, but like the ministry here. Like, we recently acquired a piece of property, we've been trying to lease it to another nonprofit that could use the space that we recently acquired, and I felt like I was negotiating, because I was negotiating a lease. I felt like I was negotiating with a negotiator. This person was actually like a special forces like negotiator, special like sniper that turned into a negotiator out in, you know, in the military world. And I'm like, dude, I'm negotiating with a negotiator. This is kind of intense, right? That's the way I felt about it, right? But what I wanted to get to the place of is that we're happy, they're happy, right? Like, you can win a negotiation, but for what value? Like where do you really win? Like, I feel this way, like you were asking about Home Depot earlier. I feel like if I'm gonna go buy something in our, like, let's just say I'm going to even do a garage sale, and I'm gonna go somewhere, I want a win-win. I don't want to try to negotiate somebody down to the cheapest thing possible, and then find out that person goes to the church and their pastor just ripped them off.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. I just don't want to be there. Or find out that they don't go to the church because that pastor ripped them off that one time, right? Like, I have a friend who is a pastor, or actually he's retired now, he's not pastoring full time anymore, but he's a garage sale guy. He likes to go to garage sales, right? And that's what reminded me of this. He's a garage sale guy. He loves to get a good deal. And so he had no problem going, hey, you know, I'm a pastor in the community, will you give me a deal on that? I never want to use that line. I don't want to use that line. I don't want to feel so needy or expect a deal from somebody, right? Like, just don't want that. Like, I don't want that on Jesus. Like, because I feel like that's a shot at his church, and that's a shot at, like, I'm cheap or I'm poor or you owe me something, right? You don't owe me anything. Like, my reward is in heaven. If I can't afford to buy something, I don't want your deal. You know, like, I just don't. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to overly pay or excessively pay for things, but I don't want you to feel bad for me. I don't want to use some, you know, space, you know, that I have in somebody's life as like a, you know, an angle somehow. Just don't want to do that. I don't think it's right. And I think we just have to be careful. So try to find a win-win solution. And I think the longer you're in a community, doing ministry and caring for people, the more you'll value that. When I go on a mission trip, I'm there to support a missionary who's going to live there after I leave, right? So for me to go do something dumb in a community and that I'm in and out of, it might feel one way to me, but the person who has to live there beyond when I'm there, like, it's important to me. If I were to take a guest speaker this weekend, we have a guest speaker speaking across all our campuses. I'm going to take him out to dinner on Saturday night. If he were to be rude to somebody in our community, like a waitress or a waiter or somebody, he's going to leave. But like, my face might be known. So that person might know me or know somebody I know or run into might be one of my daughter's friends, for instance, that goes to high school and is waiting at that table or something. I wouldn't want to be that guy. I wouldn't want to be the person who is just tearing up relations in a community. I actually want to find a win-win, and I want to just be honorable in all my dealings if I can be. So it says covenant to abide by the decision of the group if possible. That means let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you agree to something, right? Like, you can't just agree to something because you're in the room and then you got to get out of there quickly. Like, it's like, hey, we agreed just so we can be done. Or, hey, I said that one time, but I didn't really mean that. No, let your word matter. Like, if you give somebody your word, give your word. Like, if you make an agreement on something, like, stand behind that. Now, I'm not saying you can't change your mind, 8 years later. Like, my wife and I in our premarital counseling, we were doing here locally, not at East Coast, but at another church here locally. And we took a premarital assessment similar to what we would administer now in helping people with premarriage or enrichment. And one of the questions is, how many children do you want to have? And we agreed, I'm saying agreed, quote unquote, on having 5 kids. It was like, we're gonna have 5 kids. I grew up in a home where there were 3 kids. She grew up in a home where there were 4 kids. And we thought, man, we're gonna have a big family. Like, it'd be cool to have 5 kids. Well, after we had the first one, I was like, I think I'm good. And it was a girl. After the second one, we had a boy, and I was like, we good.
Really good.
Like, we done.
We're done.
Like, I'm out. And we had them quick, like 16 months apart. Like, 3 months into marriage, we're pregnant. So like, literally on our first anniversary, we're bringing our daughter home from the hospital. Like, 1 year anniversary, we got baby number 1 coming. 16 months later, we got baby number 2. And I was like, honey, I'm good. Like, I know we talked about 5, but we good. We got 1 of each. I'm happy,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know, and my real concern was not like, hey, you know, I don't want kids. It was more like, I don't know if there's enough of me for more kids. Like, I'm like, man, it's gonna be hard. Like, I'm gonna be spread out, and I don't know what that's gonna feel like. And we got a boy and a girl. We both happy. We good, you know.
It's
And
in
then,
the car.
I know, it was like,
I
hey,
need a bigger car.
you got 2 seats back there, 2 seats,
Yep.
but we good. Yeah, hey, we solid,
We
right?
go to Disney, we don't have to split
Hey,
up, yeah.
all of that. And then like, so we certainly slowed the process down a bit. We're like, okay, we're not having kids for a little bit. Like, let's pray about this and make sure we're on board. We thought, okay, we'll go to number 3. Got pregnant number 3. I'm like, okay, I'm good. For real. Like, and I'm begging. I'm like, hey, we're done, right? And she's like, no, we're not done. And of course, we're the 4th kids. And so after the 4th one, though, I was like, honey, for real, dude. Like, I know I said 5. I did. I acknowledge it. But can I go back on my word? Like, come on, let me off the hook. Can we just like go back to there? Like, we didn't know what we know now, honey. Like, for real, we didn't know. Like, I didn't know. Like, and not like begging, but like, she really wanted to have a big family. And if we could afford to have a big family, and like we could raise a big family, like we really do value the discipleship that happens in the home. Like, we feel like that my greatest disciples, my greatest legacy is going to be my kids. Like, not that you can't have spiritual kids and you can't disciple people around you, but these people, like my kids, are like, they know me better than anyone knows me. They get all of me, like, and so it's important to me that I can have enough of me for my kids, like, and it's not like we've always had just an overabundance of money and all of the time and all the things. I'm like, we're good, right? And she's like, I'm good. We're good. We got 2 of each, 2 boys, 2 girls. We good, right? And so we made permanent adjustments. So we're not going to now.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean though that we wouldn't adopt someday, that we wouldn't do
Right.
foster care someday, we wouldn't do
Right.
something like that. But I shared all of that and say we had an agreement, but it doesn't mean you can't ever go back and go, hey, let's talk about that again. You know, like,
Sure.
I'm not suggesting that, hey, you did this and forever you said that, or even holding people to that standard. I don't think that's a healthy thing, to not let somebody go, you know what, let's talk about it again. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, in marriage, there's a lot of things that you're going to talk about. You're going to say, you know, one way at one season of life that, you know, 5 years, 10 years down the road, you might feel way different about, like, you know, where you want to live, or what kind of career you want to have, or what do you want to do with, you know, your kids, or, you know, how important college is to your kids. And like, I grew up, and college was a no-brainer. You're going to college. Like, me and my brother and my sisters, there's 3 of us, all 3 of us, it was, you're going to college, like, no question. My wife's family was not that way. If you're like, especially for the girls, it was like the most honorable thing you're going to do is be a wife and be a mom. Be a wife and be a mom. And so when my wife, when I told you the story about her wanting to finish college, and like, she was going off to college, and she went to college. She wanted to go to college because she wanted to be a nurse, and she wanted to go to nursing. Well, then when she became a wife and a mom, it was an honorable thing, but she still had this burning thing in her, you know, to go, hey, I want to finish school. And to this day, I feel like she's done an incredible job. She has an incredible impact in our church, and the lives of young women, and the lives of youth ministry, and women's ministry. She does a lot of incredible freedom groups and all these things. I don't think there's anything honorable about needing a degree or not needing a degree. But in my kids' situation, my kids need to go to college. Like, I feel like it's what you should do. Like, you want to be educated. Now, if it doesn't work out, they end up doing something else and doing ministry or going some other direction, I'm still going to say education is a good thing. Like, my son is like, you know, I don't know what he's going to do with his life. My oldest one is like into some business things. I'm like, dude, go get a business degree. Even if you're going to like run a business, you can run a business without a degree. But I don't think that degree is going to hurt you. Like, let's go. Let's just get started. But it's a part of what we have just said. This is what we're going to do. Now, we might back off of that, you know, 2 years from now or 5 years from now when they're just grinding away and it's not their thing. But if we got agreement, let's stay in agreement. Let's not be waffly all the time. Marriage and family and all the things that relationally just really don't work when, you know, it changes every other day, right? All right, let's talk about intervening. Look at, respond immediately. If you're gonna do something about a crisis, you gotta be there on time. Like, and I mean on time is like when the fire situation, I was telling you about this fire, and we responded the next day to go, hey, we're gonna be there, we're gonna stand with you. And if we would have said, hey, yeah, we got time 2 weeks from now, well, in a crisis, sometimes you don't have 2 weeks. You don't have time. Like, you gotta be there when you can be there. Now, I can't respond to every crisis in this church. There's just no way that I could ever do that. But somebody might be able to. There might be a small group leader, there might be another pastoral somebody, there might be some other leader, there might be somebody who is connected to a situation that could get there and be there on time. You know, assessing the situation, we talked about that, bring calm to the situation. Don't bring more panic. I remember, this is a terrible story, like, it was a bad day. But we had a guest speaker here on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. And on Tuesday, this was years ago, but on Tuesday night, the service was letting out. So it was probably like a 7 o'clock service, about 8:30 at night. It's this time of year where it's dark early, right? And I came out of the service on the front porch. I was not even on staff at the time, so this is a lot of years ago. This is 15-ish years ago or so. Came out on the steps, and somebody was running this direction through the parking lot going, Neary got hit by a car. Neary got hit by a car. Well, Neary was like an 80-year-old woman who's in our church, super charismatic, like, you know, worship Jesus just powerfully, like dancing around. Everyone knew who Neary was. Well, Neary tried to cross the street right here, where you exit out of this, and you know the brake is right there. You know, like right here, there's 2 lanes coming in. You know, kind of going in and going out. She lived in Baxley Manor, which is across the street behind the AutoZone back there. She's walking across the street, got hit by a car. As church is letting out at 8:30, and it's chaos, and people are running everywhere. I remember running out there, and there's a guy, Jim Burnham, who serves in our food pantry. He's been a part of our ministry here, you know, a long time. Jim Burnham was on the other side of the street. Neary's laying in the road. John Stallman, which is Pastor Matt's brother, he's a fire paramedic, EMT. He was out there already, and they were trying to give her CPR, just trying to, you know, keep her alive. And turns out that she passed away. It is awful. It's a terrible story, terrible situation. But there was a guy walking on the sidewalk, and he was like pacing on the sidewalk. And nobody's really paying attention to anybody but Neary, because we all had passion for Neary, because we knew Neary, right? There's a guy pacing on the sidewalk, and this guy, Jim Burnham, who been here a long time, noticed the guy. Turns out that he was the driver of the vehicle that hit her. And he's out of, I mean, he's just crushed. Like, he never saw her. Like, it was dark. Like, you go out there right now, it's super dark right through there. And she was trying to cross the road at 80 years old and just didn't get across fast. It was awful, right? Well, everyone's panicking. And you know what Jim was doing? Jim was bringing calm to this dude. He was trying to go to work at BJ's over here. He was on his way to work at like, he had to be there at 9 o'clock, and it's like 8:40 or something, 8:35, 8:40, and he's coming down Courtney. It's dark outside. He's just going to work. He wasn't on his cell phone or doing anything crazy. He's just driving to work, and wham, there's a lady in front of him. And his whole world just got changed just like that. All the trauma that you could imagine. And Jim just went, man, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But this guy's watching everyone run across and care for this lady in the middle of the road, and nobody's like, and like I said, there were people yelling and screaming and, you know, trying to stop traffic and all the things, but Jim was bringing calm in the middle of a crisis, right? And everyone else thought they were bringing calm, but to this dude, it was just more chaos, except for somebody just took time to go, hey. And I was thankful that Jim was there. Jim could, you know, care for this dude. But without Jim, I don't know, that dude might have been walking up and down the road and nobody noticed him for a long time, until finally somebody would arrive and go, where's the driver or something, you know? But he was able to be there. Established rapport. We talked a little bit about this before. You gotta build a relationship with people. You're not gonna be able to care for people, or they're not gonna receive care for you unless they trust you, value you, understand why you matter. Like, I remember the first time I went to do a hospital visit. It was literally the first week I was on staff here. We used to have a thing we called Pastor of the Day, and so certain days of the week, you were the pastor that would respond to things, and I was the Monday. I was off on Monday, so I was the Friday guy. And it was a Friday, and I was like, on Fridays, hardly anyone was around the church then as well. And so I was here, and the person who was working the front desk at the time was Selena Alderman, which is Pastor Marvin's wife. She did the front desk. And she said, hey, somebody would ask for a visit up at Parish Medical Center in Titusville. They gave me the name, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know this person from Adam. I just went there. But I had been trained, and I'll share this when I talk about hospital visits in a little bit here. But what I did is I went to the desk and I said, hey, I'm here to visit so-and-so. They said, oh, they're in room blah, blah, blah. Oh, and I said, I'm one of the pastors at a church in Merritt Island. They'd asked for a visit. They said, oh, we'll call the chaplain. And there's like a chaplain assigned to parish. He meets me as I get off the elevator. And he says, oh, you're here to see so-and-so. And I was like, yeah. He said, oh, right over here. And it was like room 401 or something. So we walk over to room 401, and there's a bunch of family there. And there's somebody in the bed that I don't know, never seen before, and this whole family. And I'm like, ooh, this is exciting. Like, it's really not. It was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? I don't even know the story. Don't know what happened. So I'm like walking with the chaplain. I walk in, and he goes, hi, this is Pastor Brian from East Coast Christian Center. And they all kind of looked at me strange. And I was like, oh no. Like, what do you say? I was like, hey. I come like all tin. I'm like, hey. And he says, y'all requested a visit. And they're like, no, you must have the wrong room. And I went, oh my gosh. Like, hi, have a nice day. But the dude walked me into the wrong room. I'm like, my first ever hospital visit. In like, their whole family standing around, and there's machines, and there's all this stuff. And I was like, the dude walked out. He's like, I'm so sorry. Who are you here to see? And I pull out a little piece of paper that has a name. I was like, and he goes, oh, sorry. He's over in here in like 403 or something. He took me in 401, is in 403. I walk over to 403, the dude is unconscious on a bunch of machines, no family there at all, and I was like, man, this is easy, I'll just pray. I'm like, thank you, dude, like, chaplain, whoever you are, you know, but he walked me right into a mess, and I was like, oh, no. I tried my best to be like, hey, couldn't get any, I'm like, there's no building rapport now, you know, there's like, hey, get me out of here as fast as I can, I want to find a hole and climb in it, you know. But then once I prayed for the person who really needed prayer, I'm like, well, I did my job, I'm out, you know, and it was easy from there. But ideally, you would build rapport when you can, connect with people. I mean, be loving, be caring, be kind, just understand some story, be a good listener, I said that before. Determine what immediate action must be taken. You know, sometimes, you know, we want to be hyper spiritual and we want to just pray for somebody, but there's times when somebody needs $5. Like, they need a gallon of milk, like they need a loaf of bread, they need a shower, they need, who knows, like, my family's always been a little open to like, picking someone up off the road and like inviting them over to the house for dinner. Like, we've done this at Thanksgiving a couple times. My family will see somebody and be like, hey, let's invite them over, you know, like somebody just off the road, just random, right? This is like usually before we had like little kids. So like when Emily and I first got married, or like now that our kids are older, we don't mind picking somebody up, give them a ride, doing this or that. But one time I had, I do a lot of like pitching lessons. Like, I help kids with baseball pitching things because of my baseball career stuff. And usually I would do it on Saturday, and then on Sunday morning, before I was on staff here at East Coast, I would often on Sunday morning go to the bank and deposit a bunch of cash into the bank, and I would leave the bank and then go back home, and you know, meanwhile Emily would be getting ready or whatever at the house. And Grace, my sister-in-law, so my wife's sister was living with us at the time, I had gone to the bank to deposit some cash. I deposited all the cash, and there was this dude who was like clearly homeless, like soiled himself, like clearly like overgrown beard. And he says, hey, do you have, you know, he's asking me for money. I was like, actually, I don't have any cash. I just deposited in the thing. But my wife is cooking breakfast at the house. Let me see if I can bring you some back, or maybe I'll come back and pick you up and take you to the house. Didn't have my cell phone with me or whatever, so I went to the house, and I'm like, hey, there's a dude, like, do you mind me picking him up? She's like, no, go get him, right? So I go get this dude, I bring him to the house, and he's clearly shaggy, soiled himself, just bad. And I'm like, oh, we'll give him some clothes, we'll like hook him, get a shower, bro, like no problem. So he gets to my house, I'm like, hey man, the shower's over here. I get him kind of towel and just change clothes. And he comes out, and like, we're eating pancakes, I think it was at the time. And my sister-in-law had just finished, maybe she wasn't, I think Emily had just finished. And so my sister-in-law was like coming out of the room, and he starts to eat, and he only has like his teeth are really loose. Like, he hadn't had any oral hygiene, you know, just in a while, and it's just really rough, dude. And he's eating, and he finishes like what he was full. Grace comes out and sits down, and she says, is there syrup anywhere? And he goes, here, you can have mine. Like, his used syrup off his plate was gnarly, right? Like, that's like a little too far. Like, it's okay, pick up almost do, but not share syrup off, used pancakes. Like, it's pretty raunchy,
I
right?
don't want to share syrup with my kids.
Pretty gross,
Right?
pretty gross. It's a little germaphobe,
Yeah.
not even germaphobe, pretty disgusting, right? So Grace is like, no, thanks, I'm good, right? Well, he sits down, and I notice that his toenails are like overgrown, nasty, and he just got out of the shower, they're still gross. And he says, do you have a nail clipper? To this day, one of the worst or best, funniest things I've ever said or done. I was like, oh yeah, my wife will cut your nails for you. Well, now, pause for a second. My wife was a CNA and had cut many raunchy toenails, dealt with whatever.
Okay.
And I still think it's funny to this day that I even said that.
She
But
jumped down there.
she was like, she's over to this day. I can still see her eyes. And she's like, oh my gosh. She got right down there, and she would tell you, as serious as I could tell you, she felt like she was cutting Jesus' toenails.
Exactly,
Right? Like,
that's wonderful.
it was
Gosh.
so holy and so disgusting all at the same time, but just anointed for, I'm going to wash this dude's feet and cut his nails, Like,
Yes.
praise God he'd come out of the shower at least. It wasn't before he showered, It was like, And I share this to go, what was a real need that needed to happen that day? First of all, the dude needed to know that somebody loved him, and irregardless, we let him shave, and he got cleaned up and all that. We brought him to church, actually. He rode here to Merritt Island to church with us. He never came in. This used to be a cafe, like back in the day, this was called Holy Grounds Cafe. This was all not here, and it just wide open from the front lobby here was just open, and this was like a coffee house. There was like a little coffee shop in here. Some of y'all might know Leah Martine now. She was Leah Carroll at the time. Used to like run the cafe in here. He came into the cafe and just like passed out, like fell asleep in the cafe that morning, just slept over here for 2 hours. And it was just holy sleep. It's fine. Just slept and then went on his own way, right? And anyway, my wife cut his nails, and it's just one of those things. He needed to be shaven. He needed some food in his belly. He needed somebody to love him and care for him, right? And he needed the gospel too, but he didn't get that day, but he definitely felt loved and valued, hopefully, and was taken care of. And I just know the scripture well enough that what you did to the least of these, you've done to me. And I wouldn't want that to be braggadocious at all on any level, but there's times in your life where you're going to go, hey, that is more important. That is the most important. That is the one thing that's more valuable than praying for someone. Now, do we pray over our food? Do we try to minister to them? Yes. But it's not always a super spiritual thing. There's often a practical thing. Our food pantry prays for a few people every day, but they give out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I heard yesterday 606,000 meals we've served this year in our food pantry. That is mind-blowing. 600,000 meals. Those have made bellies be full to open up hearts for the gospel, right? Yeah. These are practical needs. And what needs to happen right now? Not what I want to happen right now. Because many times what I want to happen is somebody to get saved, give their life to the Lord, see their life healed and whole and all that. But sometimes it's just, I'm going to plant and another one's going to water and God's going to bring the increase. And there are days where I get to be the harvester, and I'm excited about those. There's a lot of days where I'm just planting seed. To God be the glory, we get to plant more and more seed and help the person set goals for the future. I think this is probably one of the greatest things that we can do in caring for people and counseling people is give them a hope for something better than what they're experiencing right now. Could be the worst day of their life, could be the best day of their life. Doesn't matter if it's the worst or the best, there's still better to come, and you can give them some hope for what's down there. If it's an addict, it can hopefully be free. If it could be a marriage that needs restoration, just give them hope that it's possible. If we can get them hope, if they can see it by faith. Sometimes they can't even see it by faith, but they just need to hear somebody tell them it's possible. We've been doing this marriage mentorship training. We're trying to train a bunch more couples to be mentors and facilitators to mentor couples. And we were saying, my wife was saying the other day, sometimes couples just need to know that you're not going to let go. I'm not going to let you make that decision. I'm going to be in this story with you, and I'm going to keep fighting. If you won't even fight for your marriage, I'm going to fight for your marriage. Because everybody out there is telling you to give up and quit. But I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight with you. I will pray for you. I will text you. I will whatever it may be. But just tell somebody, come on, there's a chance. You can do this. If there's 1% chance, you can make it. That couple that I told you about the $40 reel, right now, probably as we're speaking even, They're coming home from a 4-day intensive retreat where they went to a retreat somewhere, and they've been in this mentorship program for a couple of years. Finally got to the point and said, we're going to go get some intensive treatment for 4 or 5 days at a resort or at a place like away from our home, away from our kids, away from our family, because we need to get this fixed in our life once and for all, and to God be the glory. You know, I text him on Monday night, I'm like, how's it going? He's like, man, it was a really hard day, but man, we made it, you know, and I just keep going, come on, you can make it, keep fighting. And now they've been married 2 more years than they had when they first came in. They want to be done, right? And before you know it, it'll be 10 years down the road, it'll be 15 years down the road. They go, how did we get here? Because somebody's willing to fight with them, like fight for their marriage and fight for their family, and fight for their legacy. But if we don't give them a hope for something better out there, everybody else is going to do that. Develop a plan of action, move forward to the goal. You know, set something out there that you can do. I remember, this is before I was in ministry, I was living in a house where an older guy was living. He had lost his wife to cancer a couple years prior. And we came home, I was playing baseball actually at the time, and my roommate and I, baseball players, came home to the house, and there was a noose hanging in the garage. Like there was a rope hanging in the garage. It appeared that he had left it there intentionally for us to see it, right? Because if you're going to try to hurt yourself in that way, and then you don't, you wouldn't leave it hanging there unless you wanted someone to notice it potentially. He'd also left a weapon like on the table, like just laying out, which we noticed both these things. And I'm like, dude, I'm just a pro athlete. I'm just trying to play baseball and like sleep in the bed over here. Like, why, God? And like literally I asked God that question. I'm like, why, God? Why would you do, like, do I got to deal with this now? I'm just trying to be a baseball player. You know, like I was like, oh, God, why? But God puts us in moments like this to care for somebody, to go, hey, you know what? And so all I knew to do back then was to go, his name was Mike. It's like, hey, Mike, like, man, I can't wait. We're going to hang out next week when we get back from a road trip, because we were going to go on like a 7 or 8 day road trip. And I just thought, man, first of all, I'm going to take the noose. So I grabbed the rope. We took that with us on the road trip that we were going on to go play baseball for 7 or 8 days. So that wouldn't be around. We couldn't do anything with a gun because I couldn't steal a dude's gun. That'd be bad. But we had to make sure there was no ammo in it. Like we took the ammo. We did what we could do then. And then we gave him hope for, hey, we're coming back in 7 days. Can't wait to have lunch with you. Can't wait to get together with you. But you sometimes just got to set a simple thing out there ahead of somebody that's in the deepest moment of their life to go, hey, come on, let's get to 3 days from now. Well, let's get to an hour from now, or let's get to a year from now, or let's get to whatever, you know, some addict. They just need to get a couple days. They need to get some momentum in a couple days, right? Like they just got to have something out there to look forward to. But we need to help them with that. We need to help develop that plan, because sometimes they can't even see the plan. They don't even know what a plan could look like, right? But if we can help them with that, we've done a good job. So, evaluate the person's support system. People need support. They need people around them besides you and besides me, right? If you're going to be successful in life, I mean, it's been said, show me your closest friends, I'll show you your future. You know, the 5 people closest to you are going to say a lot about who you are and who you become. You need a support system. That's why the local church is valuable. That's why a community of believers is valuable. Is why God said, hey, don't forget the assembly together, because we need each other. We're better together for sure, right? Like, but if I don't have a support system, I need one, and I need you to help me find one if you're caring for me, right? I love that we're part of a church that has so many options for getting people connected. From youth ministry, from children's ministry, from Celebrate Recovery to an overlooked ministry, to access to an agape pregnancy center, to a Brevard Rescue Mission that's helping women that are, break the cycle of homelessness, to, we have a legacy group of people that are just wanting to financially push the vision forward. Like there's just such different ends of the spectrum in a local church like this that people just can find their place here. And we need to help people find their people. I think if we help people find their people, they can actually accomplish something better than they would ever dream, But I need people, and I need help doing that. Foster a sense of hope, I already said that. Commit to follow up. This is hard. Like, if I had to think back to who I was caring for a year ago at this time and be following up with every one of those people that I met with one time or talked to one time, I can't do all of that. But I can do this. When God puts them on my heart, I can send them a message. I can call them. I can do what I can do. And I can't feel bad if they fail. If somebody out there fails because I didn't follow up, it is not my fault. But what you have in your power to be able to do, let's do, right? And so if that means sending someone a message or making a phone call, just do it. You feel the prompt to do it, just do it. You won't have any regret about that. Like, you might get chewed out because, what are you calling me for? You know what? You still can sleep at night going, you know what, I did my part. I still loved him enough to give him a call, to give him one more chance, to give him an opportunity. I'm gonna take a break and we're gonna